Did NASA stop exploring the ocean due to a mysterious discovery?
70% of our planet is ocean. Shockingly, despite composing the majority of Earth, 95% of the ocean remains unexplored, adding to the ocean's allure and mystery.
Indeed, the ocean is rife with strange phenomena. Vanishing islands, chilling reports of sea monsters, mysterious sounds echoing across the Pacific, bizarre lights, and puzzling disappearances.
While we can't definitively say that NASA stopped exploring the ocean, we do know that a multitude of strange and unexplainable phenomena exist, and not every life form has been identified in the depths.
This is for anyone intrigued by the unexplained or that has a curiosity with mysteries that lie at the fringes of human understanding. I'm your co-host Izzo, joined here by your other co-host Magnum.
And this is the Swerve Podcast.
Hello and welcome back everyone to another episode of the Swerve Podcast. We've got an epic episode in store for you today, so welcome.
Welcome everybody. I'm excited to share today's episode with everybody. We're going to be running it a little bit different. It's going to be a plethora of different topics, but we'll talk about that as we get more and more through this episode. But if you're a first-time listener and you're wondering what you've stumbled across, we're the Swerve Podcast, and we do deep research on topics that swerve off the mainstream path and talk about them in an uncensored way that's not boring. Here we like to prioritize listener-requested topics, preferably topics previously unknown to us. Typically, we cover fun conspiracy stuff, fringe or cutting-edge science, forgotten or alternative history, strange myths, urban legends, consciousness, UFOs, true crime, the paranormal, or unexplained mysteries. But before we get into the depths of today's topic, Izzo, would you enlighten the listeners on our podcast tradition, please?
Of course, the tradition is that we like to drink while we record these episodes. We invite you to drink along with us, so feel free to pause this episode and go grab yourself a drink before continuing the show. But anyway, we'd like to do a quick round table, take listener recommended drinks, maybe keep drinks on theme, or sometimes we just have to keep it basic, but we'll share what we're drinking. So I'll start. I got a Long Island iced tea, since we're talking about Phantom Islands and stuff. I thought it was very fitting for this episode.
That is a good one. So I have somewhat of a cop-out, but it is related to the episode. And, I'm trying to do a little cut. So I got a vodka water. We're talking about oceans. We're talking about water. Let's do a vodka water. Before we hop into the basics today, I have a quick preamble that I would like to share with everybody. This topic, the unexplained ocean phenomena, this was the winner of the September voting block by a very significant margin. Apparently, everybody's interested in the ocean. They want to know what's going on. And I'm here to tell you we figured it out. I know exactly what's going on with the ocean, and we're going to talk about it. But this is a reminder for everybody. If you'd like to help direct the topics that we cover on this podcast, you can absolutely do so. You can sign up for free on our Patreon if you want to help decide what topics we cover next. And it's very easy to do. You go to our patreon.com/the Swerve Podcast. Press the blue join for free button. You just got to enter an email and create a password, and then you're going to have instant access to these voting polls. We release them on the 1st of every month, and they're open for 14 days. So if you sign up now, you'll be set for the next month and you won't miss it. I also want to say that this topic was recommended by one of our Patreons, Spurgalicious Asshat. So it was an old recommendation. It finally made its way into the voting block and people voted for it. So we're covering it. But we're going to run today a little bit differently than our normal topics because the scope of unexplained ocean phenomena is so broad. We're going to be covering a wide range of various topics instead of doing an exclusive deep dive into any one topic. So essentially, everything we're going to be talking about today is going to have its own basics. So we're not going to have a basics today. We're just going to go into everything, and it's going to be this spectrum, stream of consciousness episode. But based on my research, I categorized the topics into the following categories, and this is how we're going to run today's episode. We're going to start with phantom, vanishing, and mythical islands. This is some crazy, bizarre shit. There's some science here too. Then we're going to go into obscure creatures and cryptids related to the ocean, followed by strange and mysterious ocean sounds, which is probably one of the most haunting parts of today's episode. Hearing these sounds, it makes you not want to go to the ocean at all. Then we're going to talk about bizarre ocean events. and then unexplained disappearances in the ocean. So I'm excited because we got a plethora of different topics. It's kind of a smorgasbord. What's the word here? This is a buffet style episode, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I also want to specifically say I'm purposely not covering USOs, so the underwater submerged phenomena, whatever the opposite of, UAPs, they have the underwater version. I don't want to cover that because I think that could be its own episode and be really great. And I also don't want to cover any ancient structure stuff because those can make their own perfect episode and it would be really great. So that's why those aren't on the list if you're wondering. But if you want to recommend them, please do, because we'll add them to the list and they'll come up and we'll cover them at some point. Let's start today with some weird island shit.
Did you ever watch the popular TV series Lost? Did it piss you off too? The show was centered around a strange mythical island. In this section, we are going to discuss sightings and accounts of mysterious islands in the ocean, but without the narrative, drama, or overuse of suspense. Perhaps the plot of Lost was actually based in reality? Or maybe it was just bad.
So, what is a phantom island? What is a vanishing island, and what is a mythical island? We kind of have three categories here we're talking about. One, phantom islands. This is a real thing. This sounds spooky. This sounds ghost-like. It really isn't. This is a landmass that appears on maps for many years, but then it's later discovered to not exist. It kind of reminds me of Tartaria in some way, but an island.
Yeah.
So what's a vanishing island then, in contrast to a phantom island? Well, vanishing island, again, this sounds kind of ghostly. It sounds kind of crazy, but this is an actual scientific term. It's an island that is exposed at low tide, but then submerged at high tide. That's all it is. So It disappears throughout the day, depending on the time. And then finally, mythical islands. This is kind of what you would think of when you think the word phantom island and vanishing island. They're really just mythical islands. We're going to talk about all three of these, but mythical islands, obviously, this is a legendary place that emerges from different stories, narratives. Some consider them real, but they're all unverifiable. They're often based on myths, or some of them are actually based on real locations, but just based on the narrative story, people misunderstood what was being talked about. So let's talk about phantom islands first. These are some very interesting cases. But Murha Island, this is one of the most famous phantom islands. This was reported to be located in the Yucatan Peninsula in the Gulf of Mexico. What's super interesting about this island is that it was actually in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the longest lived phantom island, which is insane because how can you be the longest lived thing if it's not even real? But it is, and it has a record for this. This was discovered by the Spanish cartographer Alonso de Santa Cruz in 1539, and it remained on maps and charts until 1921. So 382 years later, this map, for almost 400 years, people thought it was real. Or sorry, this island.
Wow.
They thought this island was a real thing for 400 years, and it doesn't exist. What's weirder about this story, sounds a little bit contradictory here, but it'll make sense. The Mexican government laid claim to that island, which doesn't exist, until 2009. So they were officially like, this is our island. And we're like, okay, we know, but it's not there. They did an extensive study that was conducted by the National Autonomous University of Mexico. And once they did that, they're like, oh, the island, we can't find the island. So we're just going to renounce our claim to it. But we had already known that it wasn't there.
Yeah. That's weird.
1902, there's a French Navy vessel said they could not find any land or reefs near the reported position of Burmaha. And the story was widely reported as island disappears. The assumption being that it had been destroyed by an earthquake. So even, again, what I'm trying to emphasize here, as early as 1902, almost 300 years after this had been mapped, they really thought it was there, to the point where they're like, oh, it must have been an earthquake that swallowed it up. But it just never was, never existed.
That's interesting.
There's another island similar to this, another phantom island. This is another famous one. It's got a way cooler name. It's called the Isle of Demons. This is a phantom island once associated with Kirpon Island, Newfoundland in Canada. So here in Canada, we also had a phantom island, and it was believed that this island was populated by demons and wild beasts, which would torment and attack any ships that passed or anyone that was foolish enough to wander onto that island. So I'm like, this is where we get the politicians from in Canada. This is where Trudeau's from.
That's funny.
But anyways, this island off of Newfoundland, this was mapped in 1508, and it appeared on maps as late as 1556. So they kind of figured their shit out within 50 years with this one.
Yeah.
But it was for 50 years thought to exist, and it did not.
Okay.
Vanishing islands. This is another weird ocean phenomena thing. But again, this isn't really a ghostly thing. There's known vanishing islands. Like I said before, these during low tide, they're there, but during high tide, they disappear under the water. There's one called Samel Islands of Davao del Norte in the Philippines. And there's certain San Juan Islands between the U.S. state of Washington and Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada. These are some known examples of vanishing islands. What's interesting about these is that back in the day, men at sea, they would be confused by this real and natural phenomenon. And due to this confusion, several myths of the ocean are thought to originate from vanishing islands, which I'm going to talk about in a second here. But you'll notice I'm using the word men at sea instead of the word seamen. I specifically wrote it like that because it's better. You got to say men at sea. We got to normalize that. It's better. Seaman it's a stupid word. Men at sea, or men and women at sea. Some of these myths that came from vanishing islands, or at least is thought to come from vanishing islands, there's the aspidocalone. That's a real pronunciation. Maybe that's the word of the podcast. Aspidocalone. This is a fabled sea creature described as a large whale or sea turtle mistaken for a rocky island covered with vegetation. And I love this one because you've probably seen stuff like that. Hey, just in art, people draw turtles as islands and shit all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. With like trees on their back and stuff. That's what it's called. It's called an aspidocalone. And the oldest legend of aspidocalones comes from the 2nd century AD. So it's very old. Possibly people mistaking vanishing islands for aspidocalones. But that's where it comes from. It's this large sea turtle with this island on its back. Now, there's another way people say this, and there's another, but really it's just an aspidocalone. How many times can we say aspidocalone in this episode? But another phrase for aspidocalone is lingbacker. And this is a massive whale-like sea monster reported to have existed in the Greenland Sea. And it's essentially the same description and depiction as the aspidocalones, except it's like whale-like instead of turtle-like. What's interesting about this one, it's more sinister, and that it would bait men of the sea to land on its back, and it would appear as an island, baiting people in, like, come grab the coconuts, come grab the bananas, and then it would sink into the ocean, drowning the crew.
Baiting the seamen on its back.
I said men at sea.
But we know it's seamen.
That's why I changed it. I was like, this is too sexual. In the intro of the podcast.
Seamen to land on its back.
Yeah, it's aspidocalone. Like it's pretty, it sounds exactly like you think it sounds. It's like face down, getting semen on its back, and then drowning them in the ocean.
Wow.
Yeah.
Poetic.
It is poetic. It's a sign of the times. That's what the Vanishing Island stuff is. I think that's pretty interesting. So I wanted to talk about some of the mythical islands that I came across. One, it's called Brassil. It's also known as High Brassil, and it's said to lie in the Atlantic Ocean west of Ireland. So there's Irish myths that described it as being cloaked in mist all the time, except for one day every 7 years. So it only comes out once every 7 years. And even though it's visible, it still can't be reached. So it's this weird mythical island, High Brassel. It's also been considered a phantom island. And I thought this was interesting. It was actually mapped in 1572 and appeared on actual maps, but it's completely based on a myth. So it's kind of both categories. It's mythical, but it actually was a phantom island. People thought it was off of Ireland, but it wasn't. It doesn't exist.
Wow.
Or maybe it just stopped coming out. Maybe it's just in mist all the time. We can't see it with Google Maps. Listeners, let us know if you can find it. If you see a mist island, it's probably that.
But I did want to bring up like some other islands that are formed. They could be like pumice rafts, which are floating islands of pumice, which is a type of volcanic rock filled with gas bubbles. So they're created during underwater volcanic eruptions, and they can last for months or even years before they break apart and sink. So these could also be some islands. And then along those similar lines, the islands formed by eruptions in the Tonga-Kermadec subduction zone. So these islands can appear quickly after an eruption, but they may erode and disappear within a few years. There was one example of one just kind of like appearing out of the water in 2015. And then according to like some scientists, birds would fly over this island and like their droppings contained seeds. So within like a year, there was like vegetation on the island, and then like it drew animals to the island as well. But by 2022, it went back under the sea. So there are these like temporary islands created by volcanic eruptions as well.
An aspidoculone, right?
Yeah.
Essentially. It might as well be a sea turtle that's submerged, but it's not. It's real.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. There's a lot of cool island stuff. And I mean, really, I just wanted to talk about islands because I'm somehow suffering through 6 seasons of Lost right now with my girlfriend. And I was like, well, you know, fucking Lost, it's an island and it's crazy. And there's a bunch of spoiler. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there's a lot of stuff interesting about it. So I was like, well, let's talk about some phantom islands. Let's get some island stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, in this section, we've discussed some crazy ocean phenomena that occur or are referenced on the ocean's surface. But in the next section, let's discuss what is in its depths.
After decades and decades of underwater exploration, can we really say we know what lives in the ocean? The answer is definitely no. As recent as January 2024, a team of deep-sea explorers went on an expedition and discovered 100 new ocean-dwelling species in only 1 month. It is safe to say that we do not know what lies in the depths of the ocean. In this section, we will discuss both verified and unverified cases of unexplainable ocean creatures.
So the first thing I want to bring up, this is real. This is not fake or unverified. I want to talk about the Immortal Jellyfish. Have you heard about this?
It sounds familiar to me.
So there's this creature. Its scientific name is Turritopsis dorinal. I think that's exactly how you pronounce it. So I'm not editing that. That was perfect. But it's proverbially referred to as the Immortal Jellyfish. What's crazy about this jellyfish, when it's fully grown, it's only the size of someone's pinky nail. It's 4.5 millimeters long, which for our American audience, that's about 0.18 inches. What's crazy about this as well is when it's damaged or starved or threatened, they revert back to an earlier developmental stage and then they become born again. So say you like break your spine or something, it'd be like reverting back to a baby and then regrowing up, but you have a new back without a broken spine. This jellyfish has literally adapted a method to sidestep death. Scientists are interested in this organism because understanding this cellular mechanism behind this could be a doorway into understanding how to make human cells replace other damaged human cells and repair injuries like spinal cord injuries or really any injury, any compartment that's damaged. You got a failed kidney, you got a failed liver, well, maybe we can replace that. Maybe we can grow it if we can figure out the mechanism behind this. Pretty wild stuff here. Now, what I want to talk about next, this is not verified. This is, in fact, probably completely fake. But it's one of the cooler new cryptids out on the market. So I figured let's talk about it. This is a fresh cryptid. This lurks in the depths of the ocean. Maybe not the depths, but it comes out of the ocean. It's called the black carpet.
Okay.
This is claimed to be a giant, dark, predatory ocean-dwelling entity. It's miles in length, it's flat, and it's extremely long. This black carpet cryptid, it's thought to be composed of black microorganisms with thin feelers. It's said to start as a small mass that reproduces and covers anything in its path. So this is where things get weird with this cryptid, and this is what I like about this story with it. It's alleged to be reported by divers and oil rig workers. They think it's an oil spill when they see it, but then it starts spreading through the oil rig and invading machinery rooms throughout the oil rig. And it's just this slow spread of this black substance. And then tentacles start like growing out of it and it becomes dangerous. This is why I like is you could see maybe it's like, oh, this is just an oil spill, but then all of a sudden it's just consuming the entire area and there's these tentacles slowly growing out, trying to reproduce, find nutrients. It's very weird. It's a pretty sketchy one. I don't know how long this has been out. I should have tracked it in Google Trends, but this is a new one. I don't know if you're an oil rig worker, you're a diver. Have you seen it? Is it out there? If you're a listener, let us know. We'll report it. But what's also crazy about it, it's claimed to be able to infect wildlife. It can grow in and over infected fish. I've seen people do like AI generated stuff of it, and it just looks crazy. This black substance growing out of wildlife. It's very creepy. I think that this probably originated on 4chan as a horror post, but it was just such a cool concept and people could make really cool AI video and art with it. And it just looks twisted as shit. It just reminds me of like a black mold or something, but much more creepy and insidious. And you don't really know what it is.
Interesting.
What I find interesting about this whole black carpet thing is maybe it's not so crazy. I was trying to ground it in reality a little bit better, and I came across the Siphonophore apolemia. This Siphonophore apolemia, this is a real ocean-dwelling organism. So this is real now. We're not talking about a cryptid. This is real. And it exists in these extremely long strings, and it forms this long jellyfish-like predator in the ocean. It's simply been referred to as the entity. That's how weird this organism is. It looks like a snake with fur spilling out of one side, but it exists as a large spiral string that floats in the ocean. So it kind of looks like a galaxy, like it's like a fractal spiral thing, but it's just one long being. And the fur on that one side, this is an assortment of tentacles, and it snares small organisms with it. And it lives in the complete darkness in the ocean depths, about 630 meters down. And it can be up to 47 plus meters in length. So for Americans, just times that by about 3 for, feet? Something be close to something like that. So it's this huge thing. That sounds really familiar. I wonder if that inspired the black carpet, or maybe the black carpet exists. Let us know if you see it in the wild.
It's crazy.
The next one I want to talk about is the Hook Island sea monster. Again, this is an unverified cryptid. One of the most terrifying cryptids that I came across in this research. You can't really tell what it is, but if I were to describe it, it looks like this huge, massive tadpole that's 90 feet in length. And there's photos of this. There's photos of sightings of this, and it's huge. What would you say? Maybe like, it's like 10 times the size of a boat? This creature, something like that?
Yeah, I guess.
This has been sighted off the coast of Hook Island. This creature has small teeth and eyes on the top of its head, and it has a large open mouth that it threatens ships with. It was sighted by Robert Lee Surrick and his family in 1964, and it was moving towards this guy's ship with its mouth open, and it appeared injured, specifically on its tail. And I have an account of this. This is an account from Robert Lee Surrick regarding this Hook Island sea monster. This is what he had to say about his experience. Quote,
"It was only when we got within 20 feet of the serpent that we could see its head clearly. The head was large, about 4 feet from top to bottom, with jaws about 4 feet wide. The lower jaw was flat like that of a sandfish. The skin was smooth but rather dull. Brownish black in colour, and the eyes seemed pale green, almost white. The skin looked more like that of a shark than an eel. There were no apparent scales, nor did we see any parasites around. We supposed the flexible tail would have shaken any off. There were no fins or spines, nor were there any apparent breathing openings, although there must have been some. Perhaps we didn't see them because our attention was focused mainly on the creature's menacing mouth, the inside of which was whitish. The teeth appeared to be small. A fragment of some dark substance hung from the upper row of teeth, possibly a fish. As the monster was lying on the sandy bottom, we could not see the color of its belly. The creature was about 90 feet long. Behind the head, the body was about 2 feet, 4 inches thick, and remained that way for about 25 feet. Then it gradually tapered into a whip-like tail. The general color of the body was black, with 1 foot wide brownish rings every 5 feet, the first starting just behind the head. The skin was smooth but dull."
End quote. This was the Hook Island sea monster, and this is one of the creepier cryptids I've seen, or at least alleged, in the ocean. But it pales in comparison to this other cryptid that I came across. People don't know what the fuck this is. Apparently it's being sighted out in the ocean. This is called a Ningen. Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't.
This is the worst one. This is I don't do oceans now because of this.
I never have. Yeah. But
well, here you go. This can allegedly be found in the oceans of Antarctica and southern Asia. It emerged from Japanese folklore in the mid-2000s. It's a recent alleged ocean cryptid. This is another fresh one coming in. I think it's a little bit older than the black carpet, but it's also, we're talking 2000s. This one's coming up. People who have cited it, they allege that it appears in several forms. The first form is this whale-like aquatic form, which is at least 20 to 30 meters long. So about 65 to 100 feet for our American audience. It's basically looks like a submarine fish, whale, but instead of a whale face, it's like a human head, or like a humanoid head. There's no like face. It's just a human head. And then these long, instead of fins, where the whale fins would be, it's these extremely long arms with like tendril fingers. And this thing just floats through the ocean. That's form 1. Form 2, it's kind of like Pokemon. It's a little bit different, and it's a small form, but it's terrestrial form. So when it's not in the ocean, it appears as a much smaller organism, and it basically just looks like 2 legs, and then the head is just where the pelvis would be. So it's just 2 legs with like a pelvis, and that's where its face is. So when it's on the land, maybe that's where it begins. Maybe it's born on the land and it's just these legs running around in the Antarctic. And then it evolves into this submarine humanoid. That's my thoughts.
Looks like whale bottom, but then like a humanoid upper torso with a head.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mermaid, but not. It's way more creepy.
Yeah.
And huge. It's been described as a humanoid, blubbery, whale-like creature. It's smooth and pale, and like I said, it resembles a large submarine. And it's primarily, at least this is what it's claimed, nocturnal and is in cold water. Now, There are many different strange creatures we could go into, but I just wanted to highlight these ones in this section. Next, let's examine some of the most haunting and unexplainable sounds heard from the depths of the sea. Before we continue the episode, we wanted to shout out some of our valued listeners. Shout out to Dave P for sharing real live photos he took of the Codex Gigas Devil's Bible with us. Really appreciate that. Shout out to Nolan Dayk and Alexina93 for leaving us awesome 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. And lastly, huge shout out to our newest Patreons. Massive shout outs to Matt Hulse and Ryan Ostrega for joining our Slap That Ass tier on Patreon. Thanks so much for supporting the project. To everyone else, thank you for listening to the show, and please submit your topic or drink recommendations at theswervepodcast.com. Quickly, a word from the sponsors of today's episode. Hey book lovers, if you're craving a podcast that's equal parts hilarious and insightful, tune into Read It and Screech podcast. Join the book reviewing banshees as they dive into your favorite novels, serving up unfiltered commentary and plot breakdowns that will have you laughing out loud. The Read It and Screech podcast dissects scenes and points out the weirdest plot points in ways that you never knew you needed to hear. Whether you want a quick summary before diving into a new read or just want to hear entertaining roasts of popular books, they've got you covered. The Read It and Screech podcast will make you chuckle, laugh, and maybe even screech. Check out the Read It and Screech podcast. Your favorite book discussion is just a click away. Ready to take your fitness to the next level? The Alpha Progression app is a no BS workout app designed for fitness enthusiasts looking to reach new levels. Developed by competitive bodybuilders and personal trainers, the Alpha Progression app uses a science-based approach that focuses 100% on maximizing muscle gain and has been recognized twice as the app of the day by Apple. Both beginner and seasoned lifters rave about how easy it is to navigate the app's intuitive workout logger. Workout plans are generated from scratch based specifically on your needs, what muscle groups you want to focus on, and your available equipment. Plus, progression recommendations ensure you're lifting smarter, not just harder. Ready to crush your fitness goals? Download the Alpha Progression app today at alphaprogression.com/swerve. You will receive a 20% discount code by going to alphaprogression.com/swerve. That's alphaprogression.com/swerve. Download the Alpha Progression app using the link in our description and receive a 20% discount. Hey podcast lovers, are you looking for your next favorite show? Meet Overhaul FM, the podcast app designed just for you. With access to hundreds of thousands of podcasts, you'll never run out of content. The Overhaul FM app has a unique For You feature that lets you swipe up, just like shorts or reels, to discover shows tailored to your tastes based on what you already listen to. It's simple, it's easy to use, and best of all, it's 100% free. Whether you're on iOS or Android, Overhaul FM is your go-to app for all things podcasting. Download the Overhaul FM app today using the link in the description and unlock a world of audio adventures.
Many unexplainable sounds from the depths of the ocean have been recorded by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Hydrophone Array System. Some of these sounds were so loud that they could be heard from multiple points across the entire Pacific Ocean. Are there mega-sized creatures hiding in the depths? What could be responsible for these chilling decibels of the depths?
So the first terrifying, chilling sound that we're going to talk about, this is maybe one of the most famous from the ocean. This is the mysterious Julius sound. The Julius sound was recorded on March 1st, 1999 by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or the NOAA. They used their Eastern Equatorial Pacific Autonomous Hydrophone Array system to get this recording. The Julius sound, it's thought to have originated between Bransfield Straits and Cape Adar. The sound eerily sounds reminiscent of a woman's voice underwater, and we're going to play that sound right now.
Oh, that's what I'm hearing. But underwater.
What do you think about this?
I don't think it's that creepy, to be honest.
Oh my God. What?
Yeah. It sounds just like the ocean would.
It sounds like a Ningen.
No, it doesn't. No, it's I don't know.
So it doesn't bother you at all.
No.
All right.
It's like the white noise you might fall asleep to.
You just fall asleep to horrific noises?
I guess.
Okay, that's fair. That's your take. So there's this alleged, classified, and then leaked photo from NASA's Apollo 33A5. And this alleged leak shows a large shadow twice the size of the Empire State Building. And it was claimed to have been taken around the same time the Julia sound was recorded. So we can't substantiate these claims, but apparently there's this large shadow around the same time. So I don't know. Is this contributing to the sound? Maybe not. Maybe it is. But it does seem most likely, for being scientific about it, the sound is most likely related to icebergs. Just breaking iceberg shit.
Okay.
I'm putting out both possibilities here. The next one, I'm just going to be very brief here. I just wanted to throw it in here. We've covered this before on the podcast. I think it was on Patreon, so maybe most people haven't heard it, but Patreon listeners have been exposed to this. It's called the bloop. The Julia sound really reminds me of the bloop story that we covered in that Mysterious Sounds episode on Patreon. And basically the bloop was this ultra low frequency noise that some people were attributing to an undiscovered sea creature that would have been 5 times the size of a blue whale based on the decibel range of its cry that someone did an analysis on. And this just reminded me of this. But I do remember in that story as well, the NOAA, they attributed that sound to a large cryoseism. Maybe that's also the word of the podcast. Cryoseism, also known as an ice quake. So that's apparently ice quakes can make these sounds that rattle through oceans. And we're talking about this. It's like these sounds go through like the whole fucking ocean.
Yeah.
People hear it in multiple points with those hydrophones, which is why it's so eerie. The next sound I want to bring up, and we'll listen to this one. This is called the train. The train is the name given to a sound recorded on March 5th, 1997 on the Equatorial Pacific Ocean Autonomous Hydrophone Array. And we're going to play that sound right now.
Sounds like a train underwater.
Yeah, that's why
a
it's called the
choo-choo
train.
of a train. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they named it. The name
was
perfect.
good, but
What do you think? Sea beast?
no.
Deep sea beast?
I'm thinking like wind, underwater wind.
You think it's, what does that even fucking mean, underwater
I don't know,
wind?
but also I like the iceberg explanation.
The iceberg explanation is for every sound, though. Like everyone's an ice quake.
It sounds like if you were in a wind tunnel, but it was underwater. That's what all these sounds sound like.
Okay. Water wind.
Water wind. Well, let me just say, like water wind or like eddies. So like the current underneath the surface water, it could create a sound as well because it's moving particles.
But it's never this loud.
I guess. A really big one.
It's a really big sea monkey. But anyways, the NOAA, they say that the origin of the sound is likely generated by a large iceberg that grounded in the Ross Sea near Cape Adra. Or Ardar. Adar. I don't fucking care at this point. Somewhere in the Ross Sea. But, some people say maybe it was something else and they want to make it into a creepy thing. I kind of want to make it into a creepy thing as well. But it seems like mostly icebergs. But hear this next sound. This is not an iceberg. And this is a fucking crazy, unexplained ocean phenomena. There's this mysterious, unidentified whale. It's described as the world's loneliest whale. It makes a 52 hertz sound. So it's also called the 52 hertz whale or 52 blue. And there's this individual whale of an unidentified species that calls at an unusual frequency of 52 hertz. The pitch is higher. It's a higher frequency than other whale species. And we're going to play the sound right here.
To me, it sounds like a submarine's alarm system.
Yep, it does sound like that. But what's interesting about this lone whale's call has been detected regularly in many locations since the late 1980s, and it appears to be the only individual emitting a whale call at that frequency. So no one's ever seen the whale. It's only ever been heard via hydrophones. And there's potential recordings of a second 52 hertz whale heard elsewhere at the same time. And this has been sporadically happening since 2010, the second one. But for everybody else, it seems like there's just the one whale for decades has been occasionally making these calls at this weird frequency. And that's why it's the world's loneliest whale. It's the only one that does it in that frequency.
That's
it's been decades they pick it up every once in a while. Yeah, it's like it's calling for other people or other whales, but they don't exist. Maybe there's another one. It seems to be a second one since 2010 kind of being heard out there, but no one's seen it. You just hear it. So it's an incel whale out there. I'm trying to fuck.
I mean, technically, yeah. That's what it is.
Just every 5 years or so, he's like, fuck. Someone fuck. Anything. Oh, fuck. Anything. And people are like, what is going on? What are we picking up here? This whale sounds way different frequencies, just freaking out. Anything.
Even the Ningen or whatever.
Even the Ninjans are bailing on this. So I gotta get the fuck out of here. This lonely whale is trying to fuck me. Anyways, well, hey, the Hook Island sea monster, he said it had a big open mouth, right? So
yeah,
maybe that whale should go looking in Australia. Next sound I want to talk about. This is another weird one. Maybe my favorite one aside from the whale story of sounds. The Upsweep Sound is currently unidentified. So we don't have it's fucking iceberg. It's unidentified. We don't know what it is. It refers to a set of sound recordings detected by the NOAA. And we're going to play the sound right now.
Yeah, this one is a lot more creepy and ominous.
Oh, here we go. The first recording of the Upsweep Sound happened in 1991, and the sound recurs every year since 1991 in a seasonal pattern. It can be, what's also out of control about this one, it can be heard across the entire Pacific Ocean. There's still no official accepted explanation for this phenomenon, and we just don't know. There's some theories. Some people, the more speculative, they say undiscovered species. like big whale, kind of like the bloop stuff, or some kind of marine life. And then the more reasonable explanations, perhaps you could say, some people think it's a recurring deep sea volcanic activity, but we don't know what the origin of this sound is. And it's been recurring for 3 decades across and it's the whole Pacific Ocean. It's just ringing with this sound.
Wow.
Multiple hydrophones. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that is.
So it's clear that the ocean is loud and horrifying, at least to some people. But what other strange events occur in the depths of the ocean? In the next section, we're going to find out.
The ocean is full of bizarre phenomena. Strange flat and oval green lights appear over the ocean's horizon. What are they? Growing tubes of ice freeze sea creatures alive. Mysterious underwater crop circles are spotted, and vast areas of the sea glow a strange blue hue over tens of thousands of kilometers. What the fuck is going on?
So here we go. Let's talk about it. This is some weird ocean phenomena that we're seeing. Maybe not unexplainable because we're going to explain it, but this is some weird shit I could find. The first I want to talk about is the green flash. Have you heard of the green flash? It sounds like a knockoff of like a DC comic character.
No, I haven't heard of it.
It's just the green flash. He's like an environmentalist. It's part of like the climate agenda. Oh, that's good. But what the green flash really is, this is a sunset associated phenomenon. And it was thought once to be mythical, but it's really just a rare, elusive event. What happens is there's this large burst of green energy that occurs in the sky as the sun sets. At least that's what it looks like. It looks like this burst of green energy. If you look at this, you can find this. Maybe we'll have a link for this in our description, but it kind of looks like a UAP or a UFO fading away into some kind of portal or something. So I could totally see people mistaking the green flash for, like a UFO sighting.
Yeah.
But what happens is there's a mechanism behind the phenomenon, and it has to do with light traveling through thicker and thicker atmosphere. So different colors will bend in different amounts depending on their wavelengths. So colors with a shorter wavelength, such as blue, green, and violet, they'll reflect more strongly than colors with a longer wavelength, such as red, orange, and yellow. So this is why you get the common sighting of this green flash, and it appears as this flat oval shape. Like it's quite literally looks like a UFO. It's crazy. It's only when the sun sets, and it's not all the time. It's only certain times, certain specific situations you'll get it. But it's pretty dope. It's called the green flash. The next one, this is called the Brinicle. This is, or it has been referred to as the icy fingers of death, and this occurs in the Antarctic Ocean. What this is really crazy. It's a slowly descending tube-shaped ice beam that freezes everything it touches as it descends through the water. So if you were to watch what this looks like, it kind of looks like, so you have water, and on the surface, all of a sudden this tube starts forming, and it just slowly keeps freezing downwards. And then that tube of ice touches the floor of the sea or the ocean where this is happening. And then the ground starts freezing as well. And whatever is on the ground in the way, like if there's starfish or other marine life, they just get frozen to death. It's such a weird thing. It's an ice beam.
I've seen it before, and yeah, it does. It's crazy. It looks so weird.
Yeah. What happens is there's a combination of brine, which is simply high salt concentration water, and ice. This ice beam, it'll grow several meters per day. And then when it hits the bottom, you get this large sheet of ice, and they call that anchor ice. And then basically any sea creatures in the path, like I just said, they'll become frozen alive. If that meter per day kind of expansion, if they're caught in that wake, they will be frozen alive. And as this brinicle forms, salt brine concentrates are expelled from the sea ice, and this creates a downward flow of dense, extremely cold saline water with a lower freezing point than the surrounding water. So this is how you get this ice beam phenomenon occurring. And when it comes into contact with the neighboring ocean water, its extremely low temperature causes ice to instantly form around its flow. So it's just a right time, right place phenomenon, but it's very creepy and deadly.
Damn.
Brinicle. Another weird one I found, underwater crop circles. We hear about these in farmers' fields and stuff. Maybe we should do a topic on that. I think we actually have that on the list. Maybe it'll come up. But people have seen these underwater, and it's not as creepy as you might think. I thought maybe underwater tic-tac UFO thing or something. But these strange and mysterious underwater patterns, or these underwater circles that people started seeing, they were first observed in the Japanese seafloor in 1995. And there are these weird geometric patterns of circles in the sand of the seafloor. And they look, what do they look like? Have you ever seen when you put sand on something that emits sound and it kind of makes these weird patterns?
Yeah.
Like metal, you vibrate metal at a certain frequency and you put sand on it and you get these weird patterns because the sand kind of harmonizes with whatever the sound wave is doing. And it just looks weird and geometrical, like sacred geometry style type shit.
Yeah.
This is kind of what these look like in the sand. And like I said, it was like, oh, what is this? We don't know what it is. For a decade, no one really could explain what was going on. Is it a UFO? But it turns out to be a recently discovered species of pufferfish. So there's this fish and it forms these circles because it has a weird mating ritual. And through that mating ritual, which it's trying to use to attract mates, it forms these complex geometrical patterns in the sand. And the fish is only 5 inches long. So it's impressive.
Damn. I had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting. That's what the underwater crop circles are in that case. The other one I want to finish this bizarre events off with here. It's a pretty ridiculous name, but it's called the Milky Sea Phenomenon. This is weird, though. This is a weird one. If you were to, if you were to see this and you can't really explain it, you might be like, oh shit, is this an underwater UFO craft? Or maybe I just think everything underwater is a UFO. I don't know, but like, this is what you might expect from this Milky Sea phenomenon. What it is, you have these large luminous areas of the ocean that glow a shade of blue. And what's crazy about the Milky Sea phenomenon, they can be, this region of glowing blue can be 600 to 16,000 kilometers square in area. So huge regions of the ocean all of a sudden just start glowing blue. And it's like, what the fuck is that? So for hundreds of years, sailors have reported randomly encountering these strange, milky, luminous casts across the sea as far as they could see with their own eyes. And science hasn't really been able to explain it or even know that it was for sure happening until obviously recently people get video of stuff and we start thinking about things. But in 2005, researchers were actually able to capture a satellite image of a Milky Sea phenomenon. And several years later, they discovered that the glow was from a bioluminescent bacteria that attracts fish in order to be eaten and survive in their guts. So it's just a bioluminescent bacteria across huge regions of the ocean.
That's crazy.
It's like the black carpet kind of in an extent.
Yeah.
It's just like a bacteria. So I found that very strange.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine seeing that and you have no idea. You would think it's something coming up from the depths or something, but it's just a bacteria. 16,000 kilometers. That's crazy. So in any case, from this section, it's very obvious. The ocean is mysterious and responsible for many strange phenomena. But in this last section, we're going to outline the most strange and horrifying story we could find.
Many who have ventured out into the sea never returned. Some of these disappearances are clearly weather-related and explainable, but others are unexplainable. In this section, we cover a story that may offer a unique and terrifying answer to a portion of these unexplainable cases. Is there an intelligent species lurking in the depths unknown to us?
So I have a quick preamble for this section. There's a huge list of people that go missing in the ocean. It's quite honestly an endless list. So we could cover many interesting ocean disappearances. But I wanted to cover an ocean disappearance that is like a real Swerve mindfuck. What the hell are we talking about kind of thing? This is going to be like, is this real? Is this a narrative? I'm going to let listeners decide as we go through this. But while I was perusing Reddit very late one night, I came across a claimed whistleblower account that was documenting some shocking deep sea shit. So I was like, okay, let's cover this. Let's do it. The post was titled, "There's a reason NASA stopped exploring the deep sea." It was posted by the Reddit user GagaMaster3. The OP, this GagaMaster3, he claimed to be a former NASA researcher in charge of a division studying deep sea life. And what's interesting, I did look in a little bit to this, and NASA actually did do ocean exploration. They don't just do space. And apparently they still do a little bit of ocean stuff, but they mostly just do space. But back in the day, like they were kind of supposed to be doing both. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be exploring the sea. And for some reason, they don't do it as much. That's the framing here. So the OP alleged that NASA fired him and a small team of fellow researchers from the Oceanographic Division and then hired completely new personnel and switched to space exploration. So he's saying we stopped looking at the ocean because we came across something. And now we got to do space.
To get the hell out of here.
Yeah, to get the fuck out of here. The OP said that no information about the events that he's going to describe in the post or that he describes in the post have ever been released to the public until now. And there's 2 case studies. So let's talk about the first one. This is his account of the Montecero oil rig diving incident. The OP said he was involved with a study sanctioned between NASA and a private corporation to investigate an unknown anomaly. Metal parts at the bottom of the rig had taken damage from an unknown source, and a dive team of 3 individuals was sanctioned to go investigate what was going on with this damage. Something the divers never seen before turns out to be down there when they go to investigate. It resembled an extremely intelligent class of giant cephalopods. They were strong and carnivorous and extremely large. The OP goes on to say that they theorized they purposely were damaging the rig in order to lure humans deep down. And the 3 divers, according to the OP, were attacked by these intelligent large cephalopods that were working in unison, and they had an understanding of the human equipment being involved. So for instance, one of the cephalopods removed a diver's air tank from his back, and another one removed the fins of the diver. So they know, hey, they need these to swim, they need these to breathe, let's remove those, indicating their intelligence. And then the second diver, allegedly, according to the OP, was choked by a cephalopod from behind as another created a distracting light display with its body, showing that they have an, again, understanding of how humans breathe. They know to choke, they know to do that. The OP notes they can flash and take any color as it suits them, unlike other cephalopod squids. But normally they resemble a black-blue color, which is almost imperceptible at these deep depths. And yeah, he was just saying how that helps them avoid discovery, right? Because if they're in the depths, there's not a lot of light. And if they're a black, deep black or a blue black, it's going to be hard to see that. And then he goes on to say that the third diver was able to return and escape and report back these details. So that was incident 1 in the depths of the ocean, according to the Reddit whistleblower Case 2. This is the USS Cyclops missing ship log recovery. The USS Cyclops was a ship. It's not actually a Cyclops for anybody who's interested. But the OP said he was on a normal shipwreck investigation that was arguably one of the, and he says this could be one of the biggest cover-ups of all time. That's what he's alleging. The USS Cyclops, I want to say this is a real ship. You can Google this ship. This is a real ship that went missing. And he's kind of saying this is why it actually went missing. So according to the OP, the ship's location was found but not released to the public. He alleges that something took the ship, and he speculates that whatever took the ship was likely involved in other missing ship cases. The OP claims that the ship had a log that detailed the same beings encountered at the Montserrat oil rig. So again, coming across these intelligent large cephalopods. And he goes on to describe that there's these black, blue, giant squid resembling entities that work in teams and can use tools of human creation at least. And these cephalopods engaged the ship at night in a surprise attack and damaged it beyond repair. They dragged down the survivors, including many from atop lifeboats, using their tentacles, and they left no trace of their encounter. The OP believes they are just another species of giant squid, albeit an extremely intelligent species of giant squid. And he says that our government is hiding their existence and claims that this is the reason NASA's exploration of the sea is scarce. I do want to note, while we're describing this story, I did look into massive giant squids around oil rigs, and there are real videos of huge giant squids around oil rigs, and I have a link for that in the description. So I'm not saying they're the same thing that he's describing, but there are footage of massive fucking squids.
Yeah, that is odd and creepy to think that these things exist.
Yeah, that's what he said. And maybe with that, let's go into final thoughts and give our take on this entire unexplained ocean phenomena experience.
I personally like the island one a lot, just because there's like mythicism involved with it. There's some scientific explanations involved with some of them. Low tide, high tide. I thought that was pretty cool, and how like the Phantom Islands. I do like the cryptids because the ocean is a scary place, and you do not know what the hell is in there.
Yeah.
But some of those, like the black carpet, that's very cool. And then when you linked it back to something that actually exists, I thought that was that made sparks in my brain, I guess.
Yeah.
Even the discovery of like the pufferfish making magnificent,
weird hair.
Circles
weird
and
circles,
sand. Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm fucking boring, and I like the stuff that can be explained, or something that's like very, very sci-fi, but also has real world explanations.
Right.
So yeah, that's me.
That's your take. Okay. That's good. I think for me, in my final thought here, one thing that I found very important from this topic, this plethora of different topics that we went through, one thing that rung clear to me was that understanding the ocean, period, just understanding the ocean, it's just completely unknowable to humans, to our society, with the current level of technology and monitoring we have right now.
Yeah.
So I think this is why a lot of these stories are so eerie, and they somehow connect with some deep fear compartment in your mind. And it's just like, oh yeah, I don't want to go near the ocean, or I want to stay out of the ocean. And it really is because it's completely unknowable. Like the Ningen might as well just be real. Like, right? You might as well.
Yeah. It might as well be the lonely whale.
Yeah. Well, it could be that. Maybe that is the lonely whale. A Ningen? Fuck, I never want to come across that. Ugh. Touches you, it fingers you. Those get away from me. But in any case, that's a thing I found interesting, is we don't know anything about the ocean. We know a lot. And I even had in one of our little preambles that 2024 study finds 100 species in a month, they're like, oh, we didn't know any of these existed.
Yeah.
And that's just like 1 month. And it's not like that type of research is happening all the time. So NASA, get the fuck out there. Go to the ocean. What are you guys fucking doing? Go to the ocean. We should explore it.
Yeah. I do want to say like that whole like 95% of the ocean hasn't been researched or like uncovered or whatever. A lot of that is like based on the volume of the ocean, whereas like the sea bed or the ocean floor has like mostly been mapped essentially, but it's like the volume of water they haven't explored 95% of like every square inch.
That's a good point. But I do know even with the monitoring abilities that we have now, you know, they send like signals down based on those reflection of the signal. You can map stuff that we still haven't we don't even know the whole ocean from that. It's just like certain popular areas, and which seems like something you could do, right? We have satellite all over the earth. You would think maybe we would have something similar for the ocean, but we don't. And we should. You know, we're trying to go to Mars. Maybe we should be trying to go to the Marianas Trench, live under the sea.
Yeah. Not with the fucking giant squids around.
No, we got to get out of. We got to get out. We got to get out of here. We got to go to Mars. Got to get out of here. Got to go. 2 things. Some big swerves for me for this topic was just the sheer level of actual explainable natural phenomena that are just completely fucked. So that Milky Sea Phenomena, the Immortal Jellyfish, it just doesn't die.
Yeah.
Everything, the crop circles, the flashes of light, that was really interesting to me. But one other thing, I wonder how much of that explains ocean-associated UAP phenomena. For instance, we had the green flash, we had the Milky Sea blue thing. I could see people interpreting that in weird ways, and I wonder if there's other strange anomalies that would contribute to stuff like that. So it just made me view things a little bit different. It's like, is it really, maybe it is, you know, maybe it's just swamp gas. It's like, maybe it is.
Yeah.
Just weird lights and weird natural phenomena. Maybe not for everything, but for certain things, definitely. And the last thing I want to say, I just found, I think we need to come up with a new name for Milky Sea Phenomena. I think that's just bad branding. And I think the scientists who name that, they should name it something different. It just doesn't sound right.
Especially like now that they know it's bacteria.
Yeah. Call it blue hue bacteria. Like even rhymes a little bit, like blue hue bacteria. And like just, it's kind of cool. We have all these seamen and then Milky Sea Phenomena. It's just, there's too much fucking, there's too much of that related with the ocean. We got to cut it out. It's men at sea. Let's just start saying that. And then the Milky Sea Phenomenon, call it blue hue bacteria. Done. Way better.
There we go. You heard it here.
That's my take. Before we roll out of today's episode, I want to mention to listeners, we have a little call to action here. If you want to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, that would be fucking awesome. But for anybody who does do this, while supplies last, we have 3 weatherproof stickers, and we will send you out a sticker pack with these 3 stickers. They're all different designs, and they look cool. You can put them on your laptop, you can put them on your vehicle, put them on your fridge, and we'll mail you these out for free. All you got to do is send us a screenshot of you leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and we'll mail you out this sticker pack for free. So that's all we ask for today's episode, but you don't have to do any of that. I'm just happy everybody listened and enjoyed the episode. Now that that's out of the way, as always, we would like to give massive props and credits to our producer tier on Patreon. Thank you to David Cheesem, Shelly Terry, Alexius Ryan, Big Balls Small Wiener, Batcat Meatloaf, Velcro Shoe Guy, Tosh Collins, Honest Elliot, Max Baseman Yad Johnson, Andrew Johnson, and Christian J for enabling today's episode and the continued growth of the show. And with that, slap that ass.
And ride the wave.
How many times can we say aspidocolone in this episode? Aspidocolones for aspidocolones. It's just an aspidocolone. Or aspidocolone is as the aspidocolones, except the aspidocolone